This is the Amplify Your Business with Matt J. Hanham podcast, where I explore the entrepreneurial landscape and have candid conversations with inspiring individuals who are crushing it in their space. Welcome to the show, everyone. Yes, welcome. It's I just thought as I'm starting this show, I thought, you know what, I might just share something. I love podcasting, right? And, this is another episode. You're listening again. I'm really, really grateful that you're listening. But even though I love it, sometimes it's a challenge. And I can just tell you today, it was just a challenge. I'm just frustrated. There's a lot going on in the business and otherwise. And it's like, I have to sit down and podcast. But look, I'm really grateful that you're listening to this. And I really wanted to share that, these things, just because you love them, they can be tough. And whether you're a basketball player or whether you're a podcaster or whatever you're doing, you've just got to keep moving through it. And look, I'm excited to bring you this episode. And this episode, the topic of this episode is vanity metrics versus the long game. I wanted to just dig into a bit of a question that we got from the audience. And I received this question from Andrew, and he states, how do you deal with vanity metrics and sticking with the long game? So, look, I'm in social media. Many people are in social media. Everyone really wants to be in social media, apart from the few haters of social media. But, we track this stuff, and social media is such an interesting landscape because everything from a traditional standpoint was estimated in terms of numbers. And with digital media, you can track almost everything. It's ironically, podcasting is one thing that's a little more difficult to track, but you can just track links. You can track where visitors came from on websites. You can track so many different things. But what is vanity and what is actually achieving an outcome for you in the long game? So Andrew asks, how do you deal with vanity metrics and sticking to the long game? So maybe we should have a look at, what are vanity metrics? And I guess in a lot of ways, it does depend on what you're trying to achieve, but a vanity metric could be something like a web page view or likes of your Facebook page or followers on Instagram. It might even be looking at bounce rates and the number of subscribers on your mailing list, for example. I mean, just because your mailing list has 25,000 subscribers doesn't necessarily mean they're active, right? Same goes for bounce rate. There's always an explanation. Like your bounce rate might have gone up on your website, but that maybe you're doing a lot more paid advertising, and that's what's causing that bounce rate to rise because a lot more traffic is landing on that site and they're bouncing because it's not really what they were after. There's just a lot of different ways that you can look at data, and you just got to make sure that you're looking at the right things. I mean, so often we focus on these vanity metrics of how many followers and likes, but the truth is, and I'll tell you a little story further down. I mean, the power of one is incredible. One listener to a podcast episode, one viewer that may not have even clicked like on a Facebook post might be enough to have achieved a fairly significant outcome, like a new client or a new partnership or a new whatever. It's the power is in the number. And when we look at numbers, and especially as they start to get bigger, we often start to sort of discount the power of one. I mean, if you're used to getting 20,000 downloads on your podcast, well, you might forget how important just one is. I mean, if the next day you got one download, but it was incredibly useful and important, and that person became a lifelong partner to your business, I mean, would that be better than 20,000? Anyway, these are the questions you need to ask. I mean, better measures of, or better metrics to measure are engagement on social media, but then real engagement, right? Actual, not just likes on photos, no likes on posts. Are people writing to you? Are they consuming back and forth? Are they moving into direct messaging you? Are you getting referrals from social media? Like, what are your actual website conversion rates, maybe, as opposed to traffic on a page? Click-through rates on your email campaign. I mean, I talked about this before. Like, just because you've got 10,000 people on your email list, I think everyone's dream when they have like 100 people on their list is to have a 20,000 person email list. You talk to someone who's got a 20,000 list of emails and they want to purge their email list down because it's not being as effective. So there's always a perspective, right? And then there's a concept which I've talked about many times before, and it's from Kevin Kelly, and he talks about that 1,000 true fans theory, and that you can truly have a successful media operation just by having 1,000 fans that are diehard fans. And I think the metric is if they spend $100 with you a year, those $1,000 times 100 would be $100,000, and basically you would have a reasonable income off the back of just having 1,000 fans who are willing to spend just $100 with you in over a whole year. For those of you in client services like I am, and average client values are significantly higher than that, $100 is not a huge amount of money for a diehard fan to provide you. So, to answer Andrew's question, how do I deal with vanity metrics? Look, sometimes I have the same issue. Sometimes I deliver a great podcast episode. I put out a blog post or a Facebook post or an Instagram post or an Instagram story, and I look at the numbers and I'm like, wow, that's not good. What happened there? I mean, I think we all naturally do this, but you have to look at it over time and look at what the true outcomes are for you. You can't sort of pin your entire media and marketing campaign on the performance of one post, one podcast. It has to be a long game and measuring over consistent pieces of content. We do need, and I think sometimes we when we're talking about sort of anti-vanity metrics, there is definitely we're humans, and we like to see that other humans like other pages or comments or brands. So we do like to jump on somewhere, and sometimes it's less threatening to comment on something that already has hundreds or thousands of comments and images, likes and other things. So we do, it's not important at all. These metrics are important. I mean, if you want to get conversions up on your website, for example, it may be a good place to start to increase that traffic. But maybe there's other things that you should be doing or could be doing to increase that conversion. It's just one of the pieces of the puzzle. So, you've got to be careful. I mean, a lot of people I see these days are just buying followers on Instagram, for example, and it's not going to achieve anything necessarily for you because your client's not there, your customer's not there, the person that you're trying to reach is not there in a bunch of fake likes. So as long as you know what you're doing and you think you're doing it for the right reasons, that go for it. But that's not building a community, and that's not building your 1,000 true fans. And if it is truly all you need, 1,000 true fans, we need 1,000 likes on our Facebook page, or 1,000 Instagram followers, or even 1,000 people in our mailing list, then why are we chasing and looking at Kylie Jenner and hoping for those kind of numbers? And I think that's the problem. We relate ourselves with the likes of the big stars, and we're only ever looking at that top couple of percent and not really realizing what the true number is that we might need to achieve to get what we want. I mean, to focus on the long game, we need to sort of concentrate on the people who are engaging with our content now, and keep working on them, and keep providing them with what they're looking for, because they are your core fans. And if you've got 5 true fans, well, you need to be working with those 5 until they become 7 and 10 and 12. You need to give them what they need. You want to talk about the struggles or frustrations, and target the type of content that they need or want. And you just need to engage with them as much as possible to continually build trust. And the other thing you can do, and all you can do, is consistency. You can just need to be consistent and maintain your consistency. And that's what I was talking about at the start. Right now was not a great time to record this podcast, but it was a time I had to record this podcast because I need to maintain my consistency in my messaging to you and provide value on the basis of how I've suggested that I'm going to be providing value. And that's that I'll put one of these podcasts out every week. Right now, I needed to get this one out quickly, and here I am talking to you. And that's why I sort of shared that at the start. You don't always have the best content. I think a lot of times we fall back on this perfectionist type route as well. And we don't want to put content out, but you've got to be consistent and keep in front of the people that are your fans and that are looking for that next piece of content for you to engage with you. And they don't need you to be perfect all the time. They don't want to see you perfect all the time. They want to see that you're relatable to them, and they just want you to be consistent. So that is honestly the key. And I think, Andrew, in your quest, it sounds like you're already creating some content, and I would just keep moving, keep producing that content, keep getting better as you go, and just, keep responding and keep building that community around you. Talk to people. As they're talking to you, you might learn something, you might find something to add, to give to them a little more. I mean, that's all, like, they are your market research, and they are the sort of followers and the avatars of people that you need to keep targeting, I suppose, because if you're serving them, then you're going to serve other people like them, and gradually you'll find more. Look, a great example of the power of one is, look, because like I said, it could just take one. It could be just one view or one listen. So a story of Shane Jamal, who was on this podcast earlier on, and I'll link up his show. His show was an incredible show. It was heartfelt. He talked about his business struggles. He talked about his mental health and personal struggles. And we talked a lot about suicide and challenges around prevention of suicide. And obviously he runs an organization that helps youths with all sorts of things, and uses a lot of vision boarding, other things to help them in their life. And he said to me the other day, he gave me a call and he said, "Matt, I never told you, but that podcast that we recorded together, I flicked it on to this one person, and a friend of hers contacted me after listening to it, and she just said, I could not stop sobbing. She said, I just found it so incredible. And that person turned into I think about a $7,000 client for Shane. Now, his investment, so he was a guest on my show, and his investment in this particular show was an hour of his time. Now, I know that this is not the only piece of ROI that he's got, but he has a guaranteed direct line ROI of coming on this show for 1 hour of $7,000. Now, there's other people would have heard this, and the reason why I share that is I was a little disappointed with the metrics from that show. I felt like it was an amazing show, and I was really devastated that I hadn't provided more for him, but then only for him to turn around and tell me, look, of the few people that it did get shared with, he achieved a business outcome. And it's not just a business outcome. What that, in his line of work, a $7,000 contract means that he was able to help someone and help them through challenging times. And if that's the benefit, alongside obviously the cash injection into his organization to help them keep running, and all that came from an hour's time, maybe you should ask yourself what podcast you might be able to be a guest on. But it just shows you the true power of one. I mean, that metric doesn't need to be, if he was to able to get 10 of those, that could change his business's year. Maybe that that one listen even changed his business's year, but surely this will flow on. And that's why we need to be very careful that we're actually measuring those true ROI numbers, because I could have looked at page views on the blog post. I could have looked at, and I did look at listen numbers for that episode through my hosting platforms. I could have looked at the social media stats, but none of them would have drawn a direct line between the true ROI that was received and that podcast, like this example provides. So here's a direct line. That's what that provided for him. Now, could be more, could be less, but it's what is your actual outcome. And I think that's where we get challenged a lot of time, is we don't know what we're doing this for. We don't really know what ROI means. We don't really know what we're trying to achieve. And if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then you just can't track and measure it. So what we do instead is look at vanity metrics, and we go, yeah, it's okay because I've got 50,000 followers. Well, or 3,000 followers or 12 followers, but there's no point looking at those numbers if they don't directly line up. Now, like I talked about page views before on a website, well, page views could be fine if you know that if you get per X thousand page views, you get this many conversions. Great. Start to attack what you can do to get those page views up. But if it doesn't draw a direct line to what the outcome is that you're achieving, whether that's an ROI in dollar terms, whether it's reaching a certain number of people because you're trying to get a point and a message across, or otherwise, then you need to ask yourself the question, what are you doing this for? Is it just for ego? it could just be for ego. And you need to ask yourself that question. And if the answer is ego, that's fine. And you understand what that is. But why are you doing it? And what are you truly investing, and what is the opportunity cost? And that's so. Just to sum that up, Andrew, how do you deal with them? Well, your vision, your mission, your plan, your execution should tell you whether or not the vanity metrics matter. If they don't matter, keep doing it. If they matter to you and that's all you're after, maybe you're in it for the wrong reasons. So, summarizing that, I guess, just have a think about what you're tracking and measuring. If you're looking at your website, your social media yourself, you can dig into all sorts of YouTube videos online and find out many different ways and many different metrics that you can track. Or if you're dealing with a social media agency or someone else that looks after your stuff, maybe you should ask them, like, why are we tracking the numbers we're tracking? How are we measuring success? Because success can be measured in a lot of different ways, and there's plenty that you can do to change your game and understand what you're doing. And if it's direct revenue, maybe that's what you need to target. Is this producing direct revenue, or is this producing other outcomes for me? So that's it. Andrew, thanks so much for the question. And look, I really enjoyed talking through this topic. And until next time, guys, hit me up on Instagram at Matt J Hanham, MattJHanham, or YouTube or any other of the social platforms on there. I'd love to know what you think about, what metrics are you measuring? I mean, what metrics are you measuring that draw a direct ROI? Or like I love podcasting, right? So let me know, what has your podcast achieved for you? Can you draw a direct line against revenue or a partnership or other things that have been, the benefit or the result of you recording your podcast? I'd love to hear it. So, if you wanted to listen to some more, there'll be another episode coming out in the next week, and I think I'll be talking around some interesting stuff there. But look, the next episode, actually, forget that. You know what? Go back now. Don't worry about the next episode. We'll talk about that next time. Hit subscribe and roll back to a recent episode that I had with Brooke Valinovich. She has an incredible brand that she's building on Instagram and Facebook. And I really want you to check out this episode, How to Crush It on Social Media. We had a great chat. She loves to wear vintage Guns N' Roses tees. So, we get to talk about that. So I don't mind a bit of Gunners. I certainly did back in the day, but right, check out that episode, guys, and I look forward to chatting with you next time. Ciao.